whether it's the job of the White House press secretary, whether it's college admissions discriminating against Asian candidates, whether it's DEI practices in corporate America. Promoting and demoting people based on the color of their skin and other immutable characteristics is a cancer on this country.
And now some intrigue at 1600 Pennsylvania. The New York Post has the scoop. The headline is "Inside the Failed White House Coup Plan to Oust Biden Press Secretary." As Brian Doherty here notes on Twitter, the White House wanted to toss White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre to the curb, but DEI saved her. Huge diversity issue, and they're afraid of what folks are going to say. Basically, the bottom line is Biden's top advisors, as people have his ear, one must think that Dr. Jill is one of them. They recognize that Karine Jean-Pierre's daily appearances before the cameras is not helping, and she's not able to really deflect. In fact, when John Kirby goes up there, it's obvious there's a skill set issue here. But they're afraid if they fire her, they'll be seen as racist bigots. Akash, this is kind of a, this is the party you created. You need to celebrate.
That's exactly right. You Beverly made this comment previously, right? Which is you live by DEI, you die by DEI. It is coming back to eat its own over and over and over again in corporate America, on college campuses, of course, in the Biden administration. They're well aware of what we've all been aware of for a long time, which is that Karine Jean-Pierre is bad at her job. Now, to be fair, she's in a tough position because her boss is bad at his job too.
I was going to say that. I mean, seriously, who would want to defend this guy and this economy and this White House on a daily basis? It's not an easy job.
It's not an easy job, regardless of who's president. It's particularly difficult for President Biden, but that makes the job all the more important. But the fact of the matter is that we should be hiring and promoting and firing people based on merit, not on immutable characteristics. It's absolutely offensive, specifically to minorities, Americans of color like myself, that people are getting promoted or demoted based on the color of their skin. The White House is now reaping the consequences, potentially, of making decisions in that manner.
Yeah, yet at the same time, they want policies that force businesses, small businesses, corporations, schools to make these same choices. And now they're suffering for it. And Beverly, isn't the problem here? If they had just hired her and given her the job and let her perform, everything would be fine. They made such a big deal. The first Black openly gay woman. I mean, they led with that before they even announced her name.
Yeah, and I would like to go back to what Akash said, which it is very hard to defend Biden, especially when you have to talk about whether or not he was accurate when he said his uncle was eaten by cannibals. She had to talk about that this past week.
Right.
That is a hard thing to spin all the way around. But I will admit, I have felt badly for Karine Jean-Pierre for this reason. She was not prepared for this job. Now, lover or hater, Jen Psaki was good at her job. She did her job well, and that's because she had years of experience as a spokesperson for the State Department. Here you have Karine Jean-Pierre, who had very little experience whatsoever. And even if you have a boss that's easy to defend, this is a very, very difficult job. So I think she was set up for failure. And there's a reason why when it is the tough topics, usually foreign policy related, the adult comes in the room, Mr. Kirby himself, to clean it up as she stands to the side. I think she knows she's in over her head. I think for her sake, it would be better if she just resigned from this. But I think probably for many reasons, we're going to see her in this role up until November. We'll see who gets reelected, and maybe they'll do a switch at that point if it is another Biden administration.
By the way, Andy, this is according to the New York Post. It's Anita Dunn who wanted to instigate this, and did say what you will about Anita Dunn, but she does know communications. She does know a good White House press spokesperson and a bad one. And I'm quoting from the article. There's a huge diversity issue in this White House, and they're afraid of what folks are going to say. Not folks. They know it's very specific folks that they're worried about what they're going to say, and they're beholden to those folks, whether they've got somebody who's incompetent or not.
There's a huge diversity issue because they created it. You're seeing in the private sector people bringing lawsuits against DEI policies, against large corporations, which is going to be the beginning of the end of DEI. These corporations, once they start getting sued, will run from DEI like the devil runs from holy water. Unfortunately, this has not made it up to the public sector and the White House. They created this mess, and there is some empathy. for this spokeswoman. She is in a tough, difficult position. I think everybody recognizes that. She was set up to fail. She wasn't necessarily the most prepared person to do this when she walked into the press room with her binder and going page by page and reading statements that were prepared in advance. So you have to feel sorry for her. But make no mistake, Joe Biden and the Democrats created this mess, and now they have to deal with it. And honestly, I'll be surprised if she does survive to November, if she continues to hurt the campaign.
Do you have to feel sorry for her, though, Akash? I mean, again, it's always a tough job to be a White House spokesperson. But you look at, you think it was easy to be Trump's spokesperson? But I mean, look at how Sean Spicer was under fire, and I thought he handled it pretty well. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and so is Kayleigh McEnany. I mean, I would argue that it was tougher to be press secretary with that hostile press corps. Imagine if Karine Jean-Pierre had to ask questions from people like Jim Acosta and the attitude that the Trump spokespeople had to deal with.
I always enjoy her exchanges with Peter Doocy from Fox News, who asks the questions that the entire country is wondering about. What the heck did Biden mean? What do you guys mean? You're confusing policies and contradicting yourselves. And so, look, the job is difficult no matter who is president. It's difficult when the president's track record is awful and he can't complete a sentence. And that's what the situation is with Joe Biden. But I go back to what Andy said, which is that to the extent that DEI and things like that were involved, which again, none of us really know that for a fact, but the White House obviously leans into identity politics. Yep. This stuff is a cancer on the country, whether it's the job of the White House press secretary, whether it's college admissions discriminating against Asian candidates, whether it's DEI practices in corporate America. Promoting and demoting people based on the color of their skin and other immutable characteristics is a cancer on this country, and it needs to be defeated, not just in hiring practices in places of employment, but again, the administration themselves are pushing this stuff through executive orders and regulations and trying to do it through Congress. And so this should be a lesson, hopefully, to people on the left of center, that there are real consequences to performance if and when DEI is involved in decisions like this.
Yeah, and I'll bring it back to you, Andy, because again, as I said, before they even announced her name, all they would say was first Black woman, gay press secretary. But this is a pattern of behavior. I don't know who I'm going to nominate to the Supreme Court, but I promise you it will be a Black woman. And whoever my running mate is, it will be a Black woman. And then when you do that, and then Kamala Harris acts like she can't put a sentence together, and she's, becomes a punchline. When Ketanji Brown Jackson is incredibly educated, but she can't even answer what a woman is during her confirmation, we immediately say, oh, well, this is what you get. And frankly, that undermines efforts to actually lift up, elevate, and hire women or minorities.
Well, it just goes to show you how these policies have the opposite effect of what they're intended to do, which is what liberal and lefty policies do. They destroy everything they touch. They hurt marginalized people the worst. And they really don't produce a really good outcome for the people who are involved and are living these policies. And I think we're seeing that with, in the press room at the White House.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave it there. I was going to ask one more question, which is, am I a bad person, or should I feel guilty for actually enjoying this while I pop popcorn and drink a big ice cold glass of Schadenfreude? But I'm afraid of what your answers will be. So thanks for joining us on the roundtable today.
Thanks, Larry.